Jim, I was thinking about the word leadership. What does the word leadership mean to you?
Well, that's a good way to start. I think it's one of those things that I have studied probably 100 different forms of leadership. And the one thing that I think all of the definitions of leadership miss is that leadership is about constant change. Because the reality is, our world is constantly changing, situations change, conditions change, environmental circumstances change, and a leader has to be able to respond to those changes. And so the only way the leader can respond is to be able to be a lifelong learner, to continue learning, and to be able to, as a result, overcome their own fear, their own resistance to change, and to be able to adapt. So the net of all of that, leadership is learning.
When it comes to learning and leaders, do you somewhere feel that more modern leaders are more afraid of learning than maybe in the past?
It feels in many circumstances it feels that way. I think leadership today across the globe is plagued with fear, and they are finding that not only are leaders fearful to make change, but leaders who do want to make change are using fear to drive that change. It's the lowest common denominator among humans because humans, come prepackaged right out of the box when we're born. We have a computer, and that computer is basically pre-programmed to protect us from natural predators, from harm. And so we have a natural instinct to prevent ourselves from being harmed and therefore to trigger fear, which triggers a fight or a flight reaction. That's a very basic human instinct, and it's triggered by a portion of our brain called the amygdala. However, humans have a prefrontal cortex. We have a different portion of our brain that allows us to reason. And this is where I think both individuals and leaders need to use more of our prefrontal cortex, more of our reasoning power to overcome our natural instinct of fear as a reaction, our natural instinct to fight or run away, and instead to use our very human capabilities and pre-program or reprogram, if you will, our brains to respond proactively, not to react, to seek truth and to make the best possible decisions based on truth versus perception versus fear versus reaction.
Would you say that these qualities and being afraid of things is what separates a leader from a boss?
Absolutely. I we have a professor in the United States called Peter Drucker. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's sort of last generation, and he passed about 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. But he was a genius when it came to business and leadership. And one of his quotes that I really enjoyed was that um, leadership versus management is that managers do things right, leaders do the right thing.
Interesting.
So it's very different, very, very different from just doing things right versus stepping back, having perspective, eliminating fear, and proactively doing the right thing, which means you're not reacting out of fear, you're not reacting out of perceptions, you're actually working from a broader perspective and doing the right things to be able to advance the company or your personal mission.
Mhm. would you say that at the level you used to work at, that's pretty much the top level? Would you say is it a very hard thing to be a leader when you have like stock owners and management, all that breathing down your neck to do the right thing and be more of a leader for the employees?
This is where I think a leader's values become so important. Yes, because there are many forces pulling you in different directions. It's very easy to get pulled into a direction that violates your values or values of society in the interest of short-term gain, whether it's personal gain or trying to advance the company. The landscape is littered. Historical business landscape is littered with companies that have sold out. Their leaders took advantage of circumstances in the short term, gave in to uh, you know short-term gains personally or for the company, and lost perspective of doing the right thing for the long term for the enterprise. And as a result, many have failed. So it really is a matter of trying to establish one's values, and by values, by the way, I talk about this in the context of brand for a leader.
Mm.
Each of us has a brand, and that brand, we don't think about it that way. We're like a product on the shelf. And when you want to deal with someone leading a company or someone in the company, do you want to deal with someone that you would question what's inside, their character, their integrity, their humility, their gratitude? Or do you want to have absolute confidence in that person's brand, that they are going to do the right thing, that they are going to uh, not try to win at your expense, but find win-win solutions to move the enterprise forward so that everyone benefits? Those are the leaders I think that can be most successful. And let me wrap it up like this: that short-term focus and leaders who use fear and intimidation for short-term gain can win in the short term.
Mm.
Those without integrity, those willing to do whatever it takes at the expense of their values or the values of the enterprise, that can work in the short term. And it's very deceptive because it can be very frustrating to see that unfold and produce short-term wins, short-term gains for that individual or that enterprise. But long-term sustainable growth, long-term sustainable value creation, long-term sustainable leadership requires a very different approach, not leading through fear and intimidation, instead leading through inspiration, values, shared values, and having a vision for the long-term gain of the whole enterprise and those associated, both stakeholders and shareholders of that enterprise.
Given the landscape right now, if you think on a more global scale,
Yeah.
what is your gut feeling? Say, where do you feel is heading to when it comes on how leaders are thinking?
Yeah, I think the world is kind of a mess right now. Because
Pretty much.
yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it's not just the United States. Is the division here in the United States is something I've never seen in my lifetime. The anger that people have, and the frustration with each other. I jokingly say we need to put the U.S. back in America,
Mm.
because in America these days it's all about them and blame and victimhood and all this stuff. Well, that is not just America. That's happening all over the world. There's a lot of blame going on. There's a lot of fear, and it's causing people to pull back and to retrench and say we need to be nationalists. It's all about me. It's all about us. Now, I step back from that again. Perception, boy, that's a really bad thing, and it's caused by, people being afraid.
Mm.
Perspective, if you step back, And you say, you know, it's not really very surprising. Technology has caused change at an unprecedented level. The world is changing very quickly, and change causes humans to react, sometimes negatively, out of
Mm.
fear. So the level of fear that we see today in humanity is exponentially higher than anything I've ever seen in my lifetime. But I don't think we should be surprised, because technology is moving so fast and causing so many changes that we have to come to grips with new ways of dealing with each other, and new ways of learning, and new ways of interacting. And it's frightening people, and it's causing them to retrench and pull back.
Mm.
And that creates a fertile environment for leaders who play on fear. Because if people are already afraid because of the fast changing technology, oh my gosh, what's AI going to do? Then leaders who are um, accelerating that fear can can take the position that I'm the only one that can save you from all of this. And it causes people then to become tribal in many ways, and group around those leaders who give them comfort that they're going to stop this flow of change. They're going to take us back to the good old days. We didn't have to worry about these things, right? We
Yeah.
see that a lot. Now, here's the reality. If the change is being caused by technology, we're not going to put that technology genie back in the bottle and say, you know what, we're going to go backwards with technology. No, technology is going to keep advancing at a faster rate, especially today with breakthroughs in AI and new forms of technology. So, what does that mean? That means, in spite of all of this short term angst, in spite of all of this short term rise of leaders who play on fear and promise to take us back, I don't think that technology will stop. I think it will advance humanity to the next level, and that humans will learn at a faster rate than ever before. And knowledge is ultimately the antidote to fear. So the more people can learn at a faster rate, powered by technology, the more they will realize we really don't have anything to fear. And the more they can replace leaders who lead with fear with other leaders who lead through inspiration, and will take us to a better place, embracing that technology to make humanity more effective and to make the world a better place.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yes.
Hopefully, yes.
In the meantime, we may go through some pretty severe turbulence. But again, we shouldn't be surprised. Let me take you back. The French Revolution, the American Revolution, um, the Age of Enlightenment, the all of the massive disruption that happened 200 years ago across the globe, much of it was caused in some way by the invention of the modern printing press. Prior to that, there was no way to disseminate information as rapidly as we could. All of a sudden, all this information gets rapidly disseminated to everybody. True or not true, it was printed and it was disseminated and people believed it. And that caused a lot of people to question authority, to question, each other. And it created a lot of turmoil in society. The French Revolution, the American Revolution, would they have happened without leaflets, without pamphlets, without papers explaining why they should be upset and why they should stand up and revolt? And so we're going through that. We haven't had, in humanity, we have not had that much change in the flow of information since the invention of the modern printing press, when all of a sudden now we go from 5 TV stations to cable, and we go to social media, and we go to this absolute flood of information being available. And what are humans doing? They're reacting to that information, in some cases out of fear.
But hopefully everything turns out for the best of everybody.
Well, that's the good news. Humanity has a way of self-righting, and we made it in the past, um, and we will make it in the future. And one of my best examples, I was reading about the introduction of the book. When the book was first introduced, a printed book, people feared that information because they were afraid to put it in the hands of students. How can you teach someone with this book? You don't even know what's inside, as opposed to a human teaching a human. And we're going through much of that now. Oh my gosh, I can't let my kid be on that device. Who knows what they may see or learn, but that device is a portal to unlimited learning. It could elevate the ability for a human to learn exponentially over anything we've ever known in history before. So instead of embracing this new technology, people fear it, and they're afraid to turn loose an AI tutor on their child, even though an AI tutor and a tablet could eliminate illiteracy on this planet literally within 5 years. If we were to double down on providing an AI tutor, the tools that exist today, and a device, every child on the planet, we could literally eliminate illiteracy, which is one of the biggest causes of ignorance and problem. And you think about someone who can't read by the third or fourth grade, what are their chances in life? And does that lead to poverty, crime, disease, all kinds of problems?
Mm-hmm.
We can cure this. This is ignorance can be cured today with technology. Question is, will we embrace it?
I'm thinking sooner or later we have to. I mean, everything's getting cheaper, so you can't blame it on that. I mean, even third world countries are getting more and more cellular phones, Wi-Fi, and everything. So it's going in the right direction at least.
Yes, exactly. Well, in fact, there have been a couple of breakthroughs. For example, Starlink. Whatever you think of Elon Musk, and he did have the vision to create a constellation of satellites that will be able to light up the far corners of the planet. Apple is thinking about their next iteration of their iPhone to come with Starlink inside. So wherever you are in the world, you'll be able to access unlimited Wi-Fi capability. Combine that with the power of an AI tutor that can teach a child based on the way that child is learning. So it eliminates disabilities. ADHD, no problem. Dyslexia, no problem. The AI tutor can detect that learning difference and can provide individualized learning. Just take those two technology advances that are all within the last 10 years, let's say, and we make that available to the world. Imagine how much we could advance. I'm literally working on a project here in the United States. I'm pushing the administration to adopt something I'm calling the EOS, the Education Operating System. In other words, just like iOS changed the world when they all of a sudden made it possible to have apps and interoperability between apps and ease of access, as well as privacy and security. If we did this for every student in the United States, so that every student has a portal to any of the ed tech tools that are available anywhere in the world, if we can capture all of this learning power, then the question is, if I can get this done for the United States, why wouldn't we share this then with the world and truly provide a portal to unlimited learning to every child on this planet, so that wherever they are, whatever the quality of their local education system is, they could have the quality of education that exists today in a place like Sweden, which is among the best in the world.
Are you thinking that this will be like a form of help for the teacher, or this would replace the teacher?
No. I think the teacher is instrumental in this process. We all need structure. We all need someone to help us and coach us. I think it provides the teacher with better tools. I mean, think about it. We gave teachers books and blackboards, but that's the way they've been teaching for the last 100 years. Why not give the teacher the best tools that are available anywhere on the planet? So that
That's interesting you're saying that, because there's a change in Sweden right now, and I interviewed a union representative for the teachers in Sweden a few months ago, and the situation in Sweden right now is that a lot of teachers are afraid of AI, and because they feel that AI is replacing them and taking their jobs away. So they're thinking and making students cheat on tests and stuff like that. So it's all divided on that right now, and yeah, they have to get over that fear.
exactly. Remember how we opened this discussion, that fear is the biggest obstacle to progress. And throughout history, remember I said we were afraid of books. When I started in graduate school, I wasn't allowed to take my calculator into class. I was supposed to do things in my head, which was crazy. I learned so much more by being able to use the power of my calculator to do a discounted cash flow and to do all of these other things, rather than the old way of teaching was to look it up in charts and graphs and to have to do this manually. And so once we overcame that fear of calculators in the classroom, we advanced the ability to learn how to use these tools. It's just a different kind of learning. So we're going through this same fear and resistance now with AI. But let me give you a great example. Autonomous vehicles, now they're real. Now they work. We have whole cities in the United States now going to, I don't know if they've hit Sweden, Waymo and others.
They just got the permits for it, but they haven't started with it yet.
Okay, we've got in Los Angeles today, you can call up a car and it shows up without a driver, get in, it takes you to your destination. This breakthrough in autonomous vehicles only happened in the last 5 or 6 years. And here's how that evolved. We had humans trying to program a car to teach it how to drive. But humans were teaching the way we thought that car needed to learn. When we finally took humans out of the process and said, you know what, the car can teach the car how to drive. The machine can teach the machine more effectively than a human can teach the machine. And so let's step out and let the automation process really work. Let machine language elevate machine language, and big breakthrough. All of a sudden, autonomous vehicles were far more effective and safe. If you take that same logic and apply it to the way we teach humans, we have taught humans the same way for 100 years. Remember when I said we thought a human had to teach another human, that you couldn't use a book as an intermediary, that the human had to teach physically another human, or it didn't work? Well, we finally got over that. And then we got over the use of calculators. Well, now we are at another one of those breakthrough points where if we can get over the fear of AI, perhaps AI can elevate human learning at the same rate it's elevating machine learning. Because the reality is we as humans are using a tiny portion of our mental capacity. And we've never known how to truly expand that mental capacity in the optimal way, because we haven't had the tools at our fingertips to do it. Books helped that. Computers and calculators helped advance that. And then the question is now, can AI take humanity to an entirely new level? Not only with the ability to learn, but providing access to learning to more humans on the planet, which will elevate all of humanity.
I was thinking about one of the things you said earlier about the leaderships. You've led some of the most recognizable brands in the world, and what would you say is your your core philosophy for building a strong leadership team, if you're thinking that you're a new CEO?
Yeah, I have three things that I describe. And I've been teaching these three things that I call my gift. And I think that the three things that have made me successful over my career as a leader. And I teach everyone that I have the opportunity to teach these same three things. It is change, embracing change.
Mhm.
As we've already discussed, the importance of change. All commerce begins and ends with change. And yet, a lot of times we are reluctant to embrace that change. So, number one, change. Number two, you can't embrace change without confidence. So, overcoming that fear. And confidence, I believe, is something that can be learned. Some people think, oh, you have to be born with confidence. No, you can rewire your brain just like a computer. You can reprogram a computer. Our brain is basically a series of patterns. It's 86 billion neurons that fire in the same way, in a sense, that a computer is working with electronic impulses, and they're pre-programmed in certain patterns. And we can change those patterns through things like meditation, through practice, through repetition, and we can rewire our brain to establish a new pattern. That is what confidence is all about. It's rewiring those patterns to overcome fear. And then the third is clarity, because too often we are victims of perception. We're not really using our critical thinking skills, and we are not listening to each other carefully enough to truly understand. So that inbound clarity of listening, and then the outbound clarity of communicating simply, almost oversimplifying so that others can understand us. That clarity is critically important to be able to have confidence and to embrace that change. So those three things: change, confidence, clarity, I think are my gift that I have tried to share with all of my teams. And I've tried to share it with the world in my book called Education is Freedom.
Would you say that these three qualities you just mentioned, do you always look for these three qualities when you're putting together a new team? I'm thinking, like, if you have like your core team, your starting 11,
Yes,
do you look for these three qualities, like beyond the resumes? And what kind of persons are you looking for when you're putting together your like core team?
I do. It's hard to detect this because people are very good actors at covering up the fact that they may be afraid. They may be reluctant to change. They may revert to that caveman instinct of fight or flight. So I try to sort that out, because those behaviors are killers for an organization. You see it all the time. People behaving very badly in the boardroom. They're ready to, fight it out with each other or argue with each other. Arguing is fine as long as it's constructive. Or the worst culprits are those with the flight syndrome. In other words, that's that passive aggressive behavior that says, I'll sit in a meeting, I'll look at you, I'll shake my head, I'll say, yes, of course, boss. And then they have no intention of following through because they don't agree with you, but they don't have the intellectual honesty to confront that up front and to have a healthy debate about what should be done. So yes, those are three things that I find really important in all people that are part of the team. And at the root of all of this is honesty, is integrity, because you have to be able to trust each other to embrace change, to have confidence, to utilize clarity. The root foundation of all of that is integrity.
When it comes to personality wise, what kind of typical person do you usually look for when you want your team? Is it more like does age matter? Does hobbies matter? A person that's very very, very humble, self-aware? What kind of quality do you look for that in a person?
Well, again, I look at that brand, and brand. Each person, each individual has a brand, and it is the external packaging, let's say. Now, what would that packaging be? It be the appearance. I mean, does someone come in properly groomed and attired? And I'm not overly picky about that, but the reality is appearance is important for a product or a person. And beyond just the physical appearances, their resume is also part of their brand. It's part of their appearance, because it's hard to determine. You can't look at someone and say, gee, are they smart or not? Uh, what they've accomplished in life and their education. From practical perspective, I know there's a lot of question about, is college important, but from a practical perspective, it's part of their brand, and it says that they have accomplished something pretty important in their branding. Beyond that physical or practical external brand issue is the internal side, and that's, can I trust this person? What's inside? Their integrity, their humility, their gratitude, their positivity. Let's face it, who wants to work with a grumpy, unhappy, lying, individual?
Probably no one.
No one does, right? But we do it all the time, because people can mask that behavior until they get in the workforce, and then you find out, gee, who did I hire here? So bottom line is, those things make up your brand. And my encouragement to everybody looking for a role is to polish both that external and internal brand value that you've got, because it is there. It may not be visible. You may not think it's important, but it's critically important for everyone on both sides of the hiring and applying for a job.
Out of all the people you've hired, is there a particular kind of type that you remember till this day? And we say, what would that type look like? And I mean, in a perspective of, you would not recommend anybody with this kind of personality or type. Do not hire this kind of person. How would that be?
Yeah, it's that lack of integrity is probably the most important thing. You've really got to trust that person, that you can count on them to be there. What are they doing when you're not watching them?
Mm.
Are they carrying forth that integrity that you want for your whole organization? But let me say something else. There's, as far as types go, there's a tendency for humans also to surround ourselves with people just like us, because it's comfortable. You look like me, you act like me, you talk like me, so we can work together. But the reality is that high performing groups are often filled with people that bear no resemblance to each other. So people with very different backgrounds, very different skill sets, very different cultural influence can come together and make a great team.
Could you name an example of that you remember a little more fondly?
But I'll use an example. That was from music. I had the privilege of chairing the Dallas Symphony Orchestra at one point, and I remember sitting in the audience and looking at the instrument, at the players. The players of a symphony orchestra are all very different, but the instruments are really different. And I remember thinking, what if those instruments were people? You know that the violin's looking at the cello going, "You're fat." Yeah. and they're both looking at the bass going, "You're even more fat." and the bass is looking at the oboe and saying, "You're just weird. You look funny, you sound funny." Right? They would make fun of each other if they were people, because people look at other people and they judge. It's very natural. That can happen until the conductor steps up on stage, taps his baton, and pulls them all together. And then they all realize that they create a beautiful harmony that could not exist with any one instrument. So their differences, and I love this metaphor for a symphony orchestra because they're differences that make the sound so rich. It's those differences coming together as one that creates a beautiful harmony. And people are no different. If you have a team with everybody that is exactly the same background, with exactly the same training and exactly the same culture and values, it could be great. It's very comfortable, but I'm not sure that they will excel as much as a team that can pull strengths from different backgrounds and different kinds of people to create a true harmony.
I understand. When it comes to in every corporate environment, I'm thinking that you usually have like at least here in Sweden, we have like a term called the honeymoon period. Everything flows pretty much good, and every now and then you have your setbacks, you have your failures, and all teams pretty much go through that. I'm thinking, how do you lead your team through setbacks, failures, and go out of it learning and not blaming and pointing fingers, and which usually is the case with most setbacks?
Yeah, I think one thing that I learned very young, I faced a lot of adversity in my life, and I was able to recognize that adversity, every bad thing that happened had a lesson in it.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could focus on those learnings, then I'd never fail. Because any failure that you have, if you learn from it, will be an opportunity to learn. And I think that's something that we often forget. We're afraid of failure, and yet we learn from our failures. So the question is, can you create an environment where it's okay to fail, as long as it's not a catastrophic failure that's going to pull down the whole organization, but that failure, if it comes with learning, is actually an advantage because you will keep progressing and grow from it. We don't grow from our victories, we grow from our losses.
I understand. Would you say that based on what you've seen and felt, it's just a general theme from my side right now, but it feels like when things go wrong, like 99% of bosses, leaders, or companies, they're quick to blame. That was your fault. You're fired, and this and that, and not so much learning. It's more if something goes wrong, we hang the person. We don't learn. Is that
exactly? No, it's this victimhood thing, and it's very dangerous, and it's rampant these days. There's a lot of blame being thrown around. No one wants to take responsibility. The reality is, it's up to us. The subtitle of my book is "The Future is in Your Hands," and I mean that quite literally, because each of us is in control of our own destiny, and if we make the best decisions we can make based on the best information we have, if we still fail, then it's an opportunity to learn. And if we get fired or blamed for that failure, then we're probably not in the right environment.
When it comes to environments like that, would you say that is it possible to change environment like that, or is it better to focus my energy on finding another workplace?
It is possible to change that environment. And here's the threshold that I always used. As long as I'm still learning and they don't fire me, then I will stay and continue to try to change the organization. If I stop learning, or if they do fire me, then I've got to move on. And I look at that as a learning experience. I've never actually been fired. I have come close to being fired. I had someone who was threatened by the things I was working on, and they thought I should leave. I just kept coming to work, and I didn't think they had the guts to escort me out of the building. And they actually never did. And 6 months later, that person got fired, and I got promoted.
It worked out.
It worked out. It
Yeah.
worked out. But it's always a tough decision. But that's been my key threshold. Am I still learning in this role? If I stop learning in any given role, my first go-to is let me find another role within the company. I may have a bad boss. I may have a bad department that I'm, unfortunately saddled with, but I don't want to give up on this company because jumping too many times is not great for a career. So I'll ask for a different opportunity, and that's a different chance to learn. And in my career, I switched back and forth between operations and finance and back to operations a number of different times. So I kept advancing my learning in different roles. But I think that's the most important, to be able to isolate yourself from the institutional pressure. You see, every institution will have, not every institution, but many institutions end up creating a dynamic where people don't want you to succeed. They're trying to tell you who you are, what you can do, what you can't do, as opposed to you being an individual and doing your best and excelling in that environment. There's a lot of pressure for you not to succeed. So you have to be able to block all of that out and continue on with confidence. I'm making the right decisions. I'm doing things based on data. And if I fail, I'm going to learn from it. If I get fired, then it probably wasn't the right environment anyway.
Thinking about a person that could learn. If you're a new senior leader and you want to lead you want to build your team and from scratch, what kind of advice would you give to that person when it comes to building that team and avoiding crucial stuff?
Probably to look for these signs, to look for the fear that creeps into individuals on the team, and to create an environment that is that allows people to take chance and to risk failure, to move forward. It's a hard balance because of course you don't want anyone to ever fail, but it's through those failures that your team is going to learn. So, and if you don't try, you're never going to succeed. You're never going to take things to the next level. So there's some measure of calculated risk. How do you eliminate that risk? You'll never eliminate it. It's called business. But the more you can do your homework and the more preparation you can have, more knowledge you can gain prior to making a decision, then the less risk there will be.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to learning stuff, and you mentioned about your book, Education is Freedom. What inspired you to write Education is Freedom and starting a foundation along with it? I mean, how would you say that the core philosophy of the book connects to your dream building principles?
Well, it really started with my origins as a young kid with no role models. Neither my father nor my mother went to school beyond the 6th grade. We lived very humbly in a 3-room shack, literally without running water. And it was not expected that I would ever go on to college or to certainly be in a professional role. I could not have even dreamed of the possibility of leading 2 Fortune 500 companies. The difference was between my siblings and I, as an example, is perhaps because I was the last child, I took advantage of education. I think many in my family believed it wasn't an option for them. They couldn't afford it. They didn't feel they were smart enough, whatever. I never felt those obstacles, and that difference in positivity, saying, I believe I can do this, made me embrace education. And that ended up being the differentiator for me, and it propelled a career. So by the time I became CEO of 7-Eleven, I looked around and said, I'm a product of, in America we call it the American dream, but no one handed me this. This was something that came from within, which is what the American dream is all about. The Chinese have now adopted something they call the Chinese dream, and it's amazing, but it's even more powerful than the American dream because they have recognized it's not about entitlement. It's about individual ownership of your future and doing what you need to do to succeed, which I believe is so fundamental. So I looked around and said, there are too many people on this planet that are the victims that don't believe that they can be successful because of their environment or the way they were, or their family or their neighborhood. Anyone can do this, but they have to take personal responsibility for it and use education as the jet fuel to propel their personal opportunity. And then one last piece of the puzzle, the reason that it's called education is freedom, as opposed to education is success or education is making money, is that at the end of the day, it's just about freedom. I have perhaps more money than many of my siblings, and that gives me a different lifestyle. But what I really have is I have freedom. I can do whatever I want to do. If I want to be an author, I reinvent myself, become an author, because I have now learned how to learn. I can learn to do absolutely anything. And anyone can do this. It's out there for the taking. So that's my message, that education really is freedom. Learn as much as you can learn about as many things as you can learn. And you will have, as a result, a very rich life and a very free life, enabling you to do whatever you want to do with whomever you wish to do it.
I'm thinking about since your book came out, what would you say has the core message of your book impacted on anybody's life that has told you about it? Do you have an example on how it's affected anybody's life?
Oh my goodness, it's probably the single biggest blessing of this. I've been, as you know, traveling around the world. I've been on virtually every continent in the last year talking about my book. Just this week alone, this happens now quite often. I happened to be in Dallas, and I was at a coffee shop, and a young man came up to me and said, "I'm a senior at Southern Methodist University here in Dallas," and he said, I read your book, and I've been following you on Instagram. Thank you." He said, "You've really inspired me to realize that I need to keep learning, and you've made me double down on my studies." That's just one example. I was in Toronto, Canada. I was in recently in Dubai. I was just in Australia last week. Same thing. I'll have people come up, introduce themselves, and say thank you for the inspiration that made me realize I can do anything I want to do, and it's up to me to be able to accomplish that. Those experiences are more valuable than any amount of money somebody could pay me for a job or for any kind of work that I could do. It's just very, very gratifying to be able to know that you're helping people.
These experiences, was this anything you could imagine before you started writing the book?
Oh, no, not at all. Because, you write a book and you think most books have a shelf life of about 2 months, and the average book only sells about 1,000 copies. And I wanted to make this book a global message because I had started the foundation by the same name 25 years ago, but I could only help so many people. It's a very hands-on foundation, and I thought the book will carry this message. I didn't dream that it would be such a global audience, and here I am talking to you in Sweden today. 2 weeks I'll be in Ghana at an entrepreneurs festival. I just had a call from Kuwait, someone asking me to help their company and help their entrepreneur startup structure in a company in Kuwait, and these are the things that it's just very exciting, because I truly believe that the antidote to most of the problems that the world faces is to help elevate the education level of humanity. It'll help us overcome our fear and solve many of the petty disputes that we have with each other.
I understand. Education has changed a lot. I mean, since you went to school, since I went to school, and kids today, it has definitely changed. How would you define education today? With would you say is there a difference between education today and formal degree with lifelong learning? Do you see any differences amongst those, or would you say different variants of the same thing?
Yes and no. I think lifelong learning is the most important message. If someone takes a message away, that we can do, especially with the power of technology. I'm a musician, not a very good musician, but today I can pull up on YouTube virtually any song and learn how to play it in minutes. I didn't have access to that 30 years ago. And so there's no excuse today. We can learn absolutely anything. If you want to change the battery in your motorcycle, you can call it up on YouTube, and you can change your own battery, even though you're not a mechanic. The access to learning today is unprecedented. So lifelong learning will give you a richer life, I believe, allow you to explore things and nurture your creativity, your curiosity. But let's talk about that formal education piece, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about that today.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to dismiss the formal education and say, that's not important now. I can learn anything I need to learn on the internet or with AI. And that's very true. But here's the practical side. And this comes from someone who's had as many as 1 million direct or indirect employees over the course of his career. It comes back to that question of brand. So when we have to make a hiring decision, or if I'm a banker and I'm going to make a lending decision, I'm going to look at the external and internal brand attributes that you bring me. And one of those brand attributes will be, for some period of time, where'd you go to school? How'd you do? What was the quality of that school? Now, that may not be fair. And a lot of people right now are saying, no, that's not fair. But it's practical reality, because if you're sitting looking at 10 different candidates and you're looking at a piece of paper, which for a long time is going to be the way we select employees, just the sheer process, you have to make a judgment based on what you see on paper, what their brand represents. And that education is part of that brand. It's a form of differentiation. Back to characterizing individuals as products. We have to pick between product A and product B, and your form of differentiation is pretty important. So now, long-term, will it matter? No, because long-term, with that education operating system I've described, if we can extend that worldwide over the next 20 or 30 years, we will have the ability to certify, to evaluate, to assess individual experience and knowledge using technology in ways we've never imagined we could do before. So for the future, it will be perhaps less critical. For the present, most of us need the discipline that a more formalized education structure brings. Because I don't know about you, but I need a little coaching. That's why teachers will always be important. And the practical reality of credentialing is going to be around for quite a while. I'd say for at least the next 10 to 20 years.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about the principles you've talked about in your book on how to learn. How could a company if I'm a company leader right now and I'm listening to this, how can I apply the principles of the book and on a corporate setting to be a more learning company? How can I apply that?
Yeah, first of all, I've been calling these the meta skills because I think companies tend to err on the side of teaching technical functions. You know, if you're an accountant, I want to send you for accounting remedial training. What I think we often forget in corporations is the importance of, I was calling these soft skills, but I've now changed it to meta skills because it sounds a little, because people dismiss soft skills. They go, oh, it's not important. Well, nurturing curiosity is really important because that's where innovation comes from. That essence of curiosity. Curiosity can be taught. I call this a meta skill. Creativity is often delegated, but I encourage people to learn an instrument or a form of art because they're working a portion of their brain. Remember that computer we talked about?
Mm.
Half of it's shut off in many of us. And we can light it up. It's not that hard to light it up. And I think those skills make you a better performer, even if you're an accountant. You don't want to be too creative as an accountant. But a little creativity actually goes a long way. And even if nothing else, understanding the rest of the organization. And so these meta skills that I've characterized in the book, each chapter of the book is in effect a meta skill: change, confidence, clarity, critical thinking, curiosity, creativity, character. These are all meta skills that I think a company can embrace. In fact, I'm putting together a course called Meta Skills University that I'm offering to companies to be able to help train their employees to use some of these other skills that aren't necessarily part of their corporate training program.
When it comes to skills, I'm thinking if I'm a young leader, what kind of thoughts would you leave for that young person today about the importance of education, leadership, and general thoughts about the future?
Yeah, I'm gonna leave you with a couple things. I'm gonna defer to Yoda in Star Wars because there's a great lesson in Star Wars, and Yoda was trying to teach Luke, if you recall, how to be a Jedi.
Yeah.
And he said, Luke, you must have knowledge to be a Jedi. You must learn and keep learning to be a Jedi. Whether it was learning to fly his starfighter or learning to handle a lightsaber or whatever it was, he had to keep learning. But learning wasn't enough. He also had to have, may the force be with you, right?
The classic, yeah.
And I looked that up. I wasn't sure about this. I was thinking this might be the case, and I actually looked it up. George Lucas meant the force to be a metaphor for faith. No one faith, all faith. Belief in yourself, belief in the universe being a higher power, the belief in, if I really work at something, I will succeed. That balance is not talked about enough. That balance between knowledge, which I'm out preaching in my book, Education is Freedom. But I also talk about this idea in the book that you've got to believe in yourself. You've got to have faith. And it can apply to your religion because whether it's prayer, meditation, those are all ways that we can help reprogram our brain and eliminate fear. Because this combination of knowledge and faith, or the force if you wish, will help eliminate all fear and allow you to progress at levels perhaps that you've never thought that you could enjoy in terms of moving forward in your career or helping your company succeed.
That was deep. I didn't know about that from Star Wars, but yeah. I never thought about in that terms. But but yeah, I can see how you can a young person can learn from that. Would you say that if you the very thing you said, right? If you said that to your younger self, would that have changed any your the way you are today?
Yeah, I thankfully, as a kid, I think I was probably more confident. I had this balance unknowingly of curiosity that kept building my knowledge base, and I've got a pretty strong faith, and as you can probably tell, I've got a belief that I can accomplish anything.
Mm.
I also I use Paulo Coelho in the book. I tried to keep the book between Yoda and Paulo Coelho. Uh, keep anyone's personal faith out of it, but keep it sort of non-denominational, in that Paulo Coelho said, if you believe in something strong enough, the universe will conspire to make it happen,
Mm.
in a book called The Alchemist. And I love this because I was speaking recently in the Middle East. I was in Kuwait and Pakistan and Abu Dhabi. I've spoken in Jewish groups in Israel. I've spoken in Australia, China. And the one thing that resonates across the globe is this idea that whatever your faith is individually, it comes from within inside. And we can overcome our fear by channeling that belief, whichever form of belief you wish to grab onto, and whichever tool, whether it's prayer, whether it's meditation, whether it's just listening to music to quiet your mind, they're all ways for us to build this balance between knowledge and our beliefs, to allow us the confidence to overcome fear and embrace change.
I understand. What's the next thing you want to overcome?
I am still human, and so I'm out here preaching all this blah blah blah. And as you said, what would I say as a kid? Stop being so afraid. You worry about too much. Well, I still worry about things because I'm human, and I have to constantly remind myself that I have nothing to fear. And so, yeah, I'm pushing myself in and getting involved in places. I'm not a motivational speaker, but I'm out doing talks all over the world. It's a little uncomfortable, but the more I do it, the more I learn, the more comfortable I get, and the more I believe I can do this. So, what's my next reinvention? I don't know. We'll see what opportunities, what adventures lay before me.
One thought from me. I don't know if you can tell us, but will there be a sequel to your book?
I'm working on a couple. One is this idea of meta skills. I have 9 elements in the book. I'm working on 99 things I call meta skills, which are I'm calling them basically ways to succeed in a rapidly changing world of technology. With the premise being that technology is going to go very deep in a lot of things, but what it can't do is channel the very human things like curiosity and creativity, and for us to nurture those ideas will help us move forward as humans, even in a very technological world.
I understand. I'm thinking for the audience that is listening and watching this, if they want to follow your journey, where can they find you?
Well, for Instagram, TikTok, things like that, I'm J, initial J, Keyes, Keyes, last name Author. J Keyes Author. My website is jameswkeyes.com, and I'm out there on LinkedIn and other places. So happy to have anyone follow, and I hope they'll find a copy of the book and enjoy it, and follow me on Instagram, and please help me. My big mission is for every one of your listeners to help me spread the word, because I truly believe the answer to most of the problems we face on this planet today are advanced through knowledge. And yes, of course, may the force be with you.
May the force be with you too. Jim, thanks a lot for your time, and I wish you a very well journey everywhere in the world, and looking forward to everything you have planned.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for sharing the message with people of Earth.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.